Hello and welcome to another Black Authors Book Show presentation. I am your host, self-published author and publisher Larry Montgomery, Sr. This is a live streaming podcast presented on both Facebook and YouTube, sponsored by the Authors Corner. Online, a production of the Montgomery Media Group TV. Today's guest author is. This program is sponsored by the Authors Corner. Online, a production of Montgomery Media Group TV. Video replay is available on YouTube, the African American Shopping Network channel. Comments may be sent via email to montgomerybusiness@hotmail.com.
Hello, and welcome to another Black Authors Book Show presentation. I am your host, Larry Montgomery Sr. I'm a self-published author and publisher. This is a live streaming podcast presented on both Facebook and YouTube, sponsored by the Authors Corner. Online, a production of the Montgomery Media Group TV. The Black Authors Book Show is America's only live streaming Black Author Showcase, available on Facebook and YouTube every Saturday at 1 p.m. The recorded presentation is available every Monday evening on the African American Shopping Network channel, available on YouTube. Remember to show your support by subscribe or sponsor our authors' works. You can email us at montgomerybusiness@hotmail.com for more detail. This week's presentation is a Bible study guide written by myself, Larry Montgomery Sr., entitled 7 Godly Sins and Why You Have Them. Seven God-Given Senses, a Christian Bible guide, a guide to help you find some understanding of how to shore up your God-given gates and avoid or reduce your daily dose of sinful attacks. Eyes, discernment. Do I see what I'm looking at or what I will be looking at? Ears, allow you to hear what you want in relation to other people, places, and situations. Nose, you draw into the body the breath of life. It can tell you when something is offensive, unhealthy, and when something should be avoided. Mouth, used to voice your positions and thoughts, make statements, express emotions, and digest and break down your food. Hands. Hands signify power, authority, and self-confidence, as evident in the word as in Isaiah. Heart. The love center, the emotional center. It is the area most visibly affected by emotional stress. Not having control over emotions causes breakdowns. Mind. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God. Read The 7 God-Given Senses by Minister Larry Montgomery, available at the Authors Corner. Online or email montgomerybusiness@hotmail.com. Our God-given senses are our eyes, ears, mouth, nose, hands, heart, and mind. They are the keepers of the gates that are used to access our spiritual treasure. Spiritual treasure is another topic I've written about, and we'll discuss that in a later presentation. Right now, let me continue with 7 godly senses. After all, in this life, what should we focus on? The here and now, our natural life, or the hereafter, our spiritual life? Whether you are a believer or not, which makes more sense? A life of randomness, subject to good, bad, and random occurrences, and ending in an eternal death, buried or cremated and left to rot for eternity? Or a spiritual life, where blessings are abundant and you have a Savior who cares about your soul and has prepared a resting place for all eternity just for you, if you obey His will and just love every creature He has created. Tough choice, huh? Well, I made mine, and this resource guide was developed to provide you with some biblical insights and understandings that you may not have considered or even explored yet. I ask God to bless all of those who take the time to read or listen to this broadcast. About this book. At one time in my life, I worked as a bank vice president responsible for making business loans. At the same time, I taught adults how to write effective business plans at the college level. When I had to explain the importance of marketing and advertising, I would use this example. Let's talk about the effectiveness of marketing. If I were to ask you to take this piece of paper and Xerox it, what would you do? Then before anyone could answer, I would say, better yet, if I asked you to go and make a copy of this same piece of paper, what would you do? The point here is because of the impact of marketing and advertising, the corporate name of Xerox has become synonymous with the task of photocopying. Now, with that as a backdrop, I ask you, can you honestly say you are living a life free of sin? As we all know, the act of sinning is not the act, but the thought of it. Again, for example, if you feel like killing someone for whatever reason, but you don't actually do it, can that be considered a sin? The answer is yes. Sin by mere thought is still a sin. Fulfilled or unfulfilled sins are still sins. Many of us attempt to address this daily bombardment of worldly sin by staying to ourselves or just out of harm's way. But are we ever really out of sin's way? Sitting in front of my television or listening to music in my car puts me in a place where I can still be attacked by sinful thoughts or ideas by way of my godly senses. My eyes see sin on television. My ears hear sinful talk or music, even if I did not turn it on. I would watch those I loved sit for hours watching distasteful reality shows on cable and just wait and watch that language, those ideas and mindsets start to pour out of their mouths, either in anger or as side comments. This guide is a collection of articles and biblical verses with commentary, just taking a look at the resources God has given us to safeguard all of the points of which sin can attack us without our even realizing it. I hope you find some understanding on how to shore up your God-given gates and avoid or reduce your daily dose of sinful attacks. God bless. Let me introduce one of the articles in our book, our guide, Knowledge of Spiritual Gates, Doors in Our Lives, Their Effects, and How to Deal with Them, by Mama Diana Crisco. Matthew 16:18. And I also say unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. John 10:10. The thief cometh not but to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. I am come that thou might have life, and that thou might have it more abundantly. Lastly, Matthew 11:12. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. Now, as the article introduces, a standard gate is usually a dual, double leaf, or single leaf movable barrier hinged to a fence or wall, which opens or shuts to grant or deny access to persons, animals, or vehicles. In the simplest sense, it is a barrier designed to lock friends in and enemies out. Gates are erected to control entry and exit into a house, block of houses, office complex, cities, institutions, towns, estates, animal pens, car parks, sports stadiums, entertainment venues, national parks, military garrisons, power and water plants, airports, seaports, country barriers, etc. A biblical account of gates. In the Bible, the men of God understood the importance of gates and what they stood for. Hence, in their prayers, the constant refrain was, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. Genesis 24:60. We are the same repeated in the book of Genesis when the angel of God prayed for Father Abraham. Quote, and thy seed shall possess the gates of his enemies. Unquote. Genesis 22:17. The gates of Jericho in Joshua 6:1. Reread how the people of Jericho effectively utilize the purpose for erecting gates. Quote, now Jericho was strictly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. Why did they shut their gates? The gates were shut because of the great fear of Israel's mighty military ability. The story is best told in the words of Rahab, the harlot, in the book of Joshua 2, chapter 2, verses 9 to 10. Quote, and she said unto them, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. Unquote. Now, I want to skip down to, I want to give you a little bit about the spiritual speaking. Where are the open gates that lead to strongholds? The soul of man, mind, will, and emotions is like a house. We find that in Matthew 12:43 to 45. Quote, when an evil spirit leaves a man, it looks for a place to rest. If it does not find one, it comes back to the house it left. If it finds it empty, swept, and in order, it goes and comes back with seven spirits more wicked than it. Unquote. Next, the enemy is like a wild animal, crouched, ready to spring into an opening. Genesis 4 and 7. Quote, if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. Unquote. Finally, here are a couple of examples of things that open doors, gates, to your spirit: anger and occult involvement. And when a door or gate is open, sin can enter. Now, depending on which gate or door is open, different kinds of sin will enter. For example, the back door, sin will enter and bring unforgiveness, witchcraft, addictions, selfishness, bitterness, idolatry, greed, hate, false religions, secret sins, pride, revenge, evil possessions, strife, sexual sins, rebellion, cursing, vain imaginations. The left door, the fear of man, brings evil or doubt when entered. The right door, generational curses, sends authority. The front door, mental and emotional. Now, before we start talking about the general methods that Satan uses to attack our spiritual gates, well, let me give you a couple of them. I'm not going to give you any detail, but I'm going to give you a couple of those methods he uses. Enticement. He uses oppression. He uses possession. Those three. And here are some specific methods. He uses surprise. We find that in Exodus 17 and 8. He attacks at the point of our weakness. He attacks at the point of our strengths. He uses aggression. He steals the good seed of the word. He sows tares. He inflicts disease. He inflicts death and destruction. He brings accusations against believers. He induces mental and emotional disorders. Now we go on to talk about, in that particular article, the enemy's weapons. And we come to where we talk about God gives us divine protection. Okay? How do we close the doors? Close the gates. We talk about that. We ask God to show us what gates are open, and how we can deal with problems. Now, I'm kind of hesitating because I don't want to go but so far and giving you some idea of what this book is about. But I'll say this in closing, that for those of you who may or may not have had an opportunity in your particular church or Bible study to examine this discourse, please consider obtaining this book, The Seven Godly Senses. I'm sorry. The devil is just busy because he don't want you to hear about this stuff. Because the better you know your enemy, the better you know how to protect yourself from them. And so I'm going to leave you with that particular point. Again, this is the Black Authors Book Show, and the presentation is Seven Godly Senses and why you have them. You have just experienced America's only live streaming showcase for Black authors online. This is the Black Authors Book Show. Join us again next week right here. This show was sponsored by the AuthorsCorner.online and is a presentation of the Montgomery Media Group TV. To subscribe and support our effort, please email us at montgomerybusiness@hotmail.com. Thank you and God bless.
You have just experienced America's only live streaming showcase for Black authors online. This is the Black Authors Book Show. Join us again next week right here. This show was sponsored by the AuthorsCorner.online and is a presentation of the Montgomery Media Group TV. To subscribe and support our effort, please email us at montgomerybusiness@hotmail.com. Thank you and God bless.